In the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan, where death whispered through every valley and shadows held secrets darker than the night itself, Marine Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez had seen enough war to last 3 lifetimes. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for what she was about to witness on that fog-shrouded morning in October 2011. The kind of morning where the mist clung to the earth like the souls of the fallen, refusing to let go. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Elena crouched behind the jagged rocks of Forward Operating Base, Reaper, her weathered hands gripping her M4 carbine with the familiarity of a lifelong companion. At 28, she had already completed 2 tours in Iraq and was halfway through her 3rd deployment, this time in the treacherous Kunar Province of Afghanistan. Her dark eyes, hardened by countless firefights and losses that cut deeper than any enemy blade, scanned the valley below where Serpent Lake stretched like a mirror reflecting the gray October sky. The base itself was a testament to American ingenuity and determination, a collection of fortified structures carved into the mountainside, surrounded by HESCO barriers and razor wire that gleamed like deadly jewelry in the pale morning light. Home to Alpha Company, 2nd Battalion 1st Marines, FOB Reaper housed roughly 200 Marines who had been tasked with one of the most dangerous missions in the region, disrupting Taliban supply lines that snaked through the valley like venomous arteries feeding the insurgency. Elena's team, callsign Phantom 6, consisted of 12 of the finest Marines she had ever served alongside. There was Corporal Marcus "Tank" Rodriguez from Detroit, whose massive frame could carry a full pack and still outrun most men half his size. Private First Class Sarah Mitchell from rural Montana, barely 19, but already proven in 3 major engagements, her blonde hair always tucked neatly under her Kevlar helmet. Lance Corporal James "Ghost" Peterson, ironically known long before the events that would unfold, was their communications specialist, a tech wizard from Silicon Valley who had enlisted after 9/11 despite having a 6-figure job waiting for him. But it was Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez who held them all together. Born in East Los Angeles to immigrant parents who had sacrificed everything for the American dream, Elena had joined the Marines at 18, driven by a fierce love of country and an unshakable belief that freedom wasn't free. It was paid for in blood, sweat, and unwavering dedication. She had earned her reputation as one of the finest non-commissioned officers in the Corps through sheer determination, tactical brilliance, and an almost supernatural ability to bring her Marines home alive. The morning of October 15th started like any other. The pre-dawn briefing in the command bunker had been routine. Another patrol to sweep the valley for IED emplacements, another day of watching for muzzle flashes from the countless caves and crevices that pockmarked the mountainside like deadly acne. Intelligence suggested a high-value target. A Taliban commander responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces was moving through the area. Their mission was simple in concept, hellish in execution. Find him, fix him, and finish him. As Elena's team moved out in the early morning darkness, their boots crunching softly on the gravel path that wound down toward the valley floor, none of them could have imagined that they were about to encounter something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about warfare, about death, and about the thin line that separates the world of the living from whatever lies beyond. The valley itself was a natural amphitheater of death, surrounded on 3 sides by towering peaks that rose like ancient sentinels into the cloud-shrouded sky. Serpent Lake occupied the center of this natural fortress, its dark waters fed by underground springs that kept it from freezing, even in the harsh Afghan winter. Local villagers had long whispered stories about the lake, tales of spirits and shadows, of warriors who had died defending their homeland and whose souls still patrolled the waters. Elena had dismissed such superstitions as the natural folklore of a people who had known nothing but war for centuries. She was about to learn how wrong she could be. The first sign that this day would be different came at 0630 hours, just as the sun began to paint the eastern peaks with fingers of golden light. Elena's radio crackled to life with the urgent voice of Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, the base commander whose steady nerves and tactical acumen had kept FOB Reaper operational through 18 months of constant enemy contact.
Phantom 6, this is Reaper Actual. We're receiving reports of enemy movement approximately 200 meters southeast of your current position. Multiple Taliban fighters, possibly 15 to 20 personnel, moving toward the lake. Your orders are to observe and report. Do not engage unless fired upon. Intelligence suggests this might be our high-value target. We need eyes on, not bodies in bags. How copy? Over. Elena pressed the radio transmit button, her voice calm and professional despite the adrenaline beginning to course through her veins. Reaper Actual, this is Phantom 6. Solid copy. We are moving to Observation Point Bravo. We'll maintain overwatch and report enemy movement. Phantom 6, out.
As Elena's team moved into position along the rocky outcropping that provided an elevated view of Serpent Lake, the morning mist began to lift, revealing a scene that would forever be burned into their memories. The lake stretched before them like a sheet of black glass, its surface so still it seemed frozen in time. Ancient willows drooped their branches into the water along the shoreline, creating natural blinds where 1,000 enemies could hide, or where one ghost could emerge. Elena raised her field glasses and began scanning the terrain methodically, her trained eye picking out every shadow, every irregularity, every potential threat. Through her scope, she could see the Taliban fighters Lieutenant Colonel Harrison had mentioned. They were moving with military precision along the far shore of the lake, their AK-47s held at the ready, their movements suggesting they were either highly trained foreign fighters or local Taliban who had been seasoned by years of combat against coalition forces. "Tank, I need you and Mitchell on the 50, Elena whispered, referring to the M240B machine gun that Corporal Rodriguez carried with the casual ease of a man handling a walking stick. "Ghost, get on the radio and give Reaper Actual a full sitrep. Count I have is 18 enemy personnel moving in tactical formation along the northern shoreline." Private First Class Mitchell, her young face already bearing the 1,000-yard stare that marked veterans of this endless war, slithered into position beside Rodriguez. Despite her youth, Sarah Mitchell had proven herself time and again to be one of the steadiest Marines Elena had ever served with. The girl from Montana had grown up hunting elk in terrain not unlike these Afghan mountains, and her marksmanship scores were among the highest in the battalion. As the morning progressed, Elena watched the Taliban fighters through her scope with growing unease. Something about their movement pattern bothered her. They were being too careful, too methodical, as if they knew they were being watched. In her experience, Taliban fighters in this region were usually more aggressive, more willing to take risks. These men moved like professionals, like soldiers who understood that patience and discipline were often the difference between victory and death. It was Corporal Rodriguez who first noticed something was wrong. "Staff Sergeant," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the gentle lapping of water against the shoreline below. "Check out your 2 o'clock, about 300 meters. Something's not right about that willow tree." Elena swung her field glasses toward the spot Rodriguez had indicated. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just another of the ancient willows that dotted the shoreline, its gnarled branches creating a natural canopy over the dark water. But as she watched, something caught her eye. The branches were moving, but there was no wind. The morning air was perfectly still, yet the willow swayed as if touched by invisible hands. "Mitchell, you seeing this?" Elena asked, never taking her eyes from the tree. The young Marine adjusted her scope and studied the willow for several long seconds. "Roger, Staff Sergeant. Something's definitely not right. It's like something's moving inside the tree, but I can't make out what it is." That was when the shooting started. The first shot came from somewhere near the mysterious willow tree, a sharp crack that echoed across the water like thunder in the morning stillness. One of the Taliban fighters on the far shore spun and dropped, his AK-47 clattering against the rocks as he fell. The remaining 17 fighters immediately took cover, scanning the area frantically for the source of the shot. Elena's radio exploded with chatter as every Marine on the frequency tried to report what they had witnessed. Through it all, Lieutenant Colonel Harrison's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "All stations, this is Reaper Actual. Who fired that shot? I need immediate confirmation of friendly forces in the area. Someone just dropped a tango at 300 meters. Who's taking these shots?" Elena pressed her transmit button, her voice tight with confusion and growing alarm.
Reaper Actual, this is Phantom 6. We did not fire. Repeat, Phantom 6 did not engage. Shot came from approximately hour 11 o'clock, near the shoreline. We have no visual on the shooter. A second shot rang out, then a third. Each time, another Taliban fighter fell with precision that spoke of professional training and equipment far beyond what local insurgents typically possessed. The remaining fighters were now in full panic, firing wildly at shadows and trees, their discipline completely broken by an enemy they could not see, could not locate, could not fight. "This is impossible," whispered Lance Corporal Peterson, his face pale as he watched the systematic destruction of the Taliban unit through his spotting scope. "Nobody's that good. Those shots are coming from at least 400 meters, and whoever's shooting is hitting center mass every time. In this light, with this terrain, that's not humanly possible." Elena felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the mountain air. In her 8 years as a Marine, she had worked with some of the finest snipers in the world, Force Recon Marines, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers. She knew what elite marksmanship looked like, and this was beyond elite. This was something else entirely. The fourth shot silenced the last of the return fire from the Taliban position. The fifth shot, then the sixth and seventh, each finding their mark with mechanical precision. By the time the eighth shot echoed across Serpent Lake, only dead silence remained where moments before 18 enemy fighters had been preparing what intelligence suggested was a major attack on FOB Reaper. Elena lowered her field glasses and looked at her team. Each Marine wore the same expression of confused awe and growing dread. They were professional warriors, trained to analyze and understand battlefield situations, but what they had just witnessed defied every tactical manual, every bit of training, every assumption they had about modern warfare. "Staff Sergeant!" Private Mitchell was barely a whisper. "Who the hell was that?" Before Elena could respond to Mitchell's question, movement near the willow tree caught her attention. Through her field glasses, she watched, in stunned silence, as a figure began to emerge from the water at the base of the ancient tree. At first, it appeared to be just another shadow, a trick of the light playing across the rippled surface of Serpent Lake. But as the figure rose from the water with impossible grace and silence, Elena realized she was witnessing something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. The figure was unmistakably female, tall and lean, with the fluid movements of someone who had spent years perfecting the deadly art of warfare. Her long, dark hair was slicked back from the water, and she wore what appeared to be a ghillie suit that seemed to shift and blur at the edges, making it difficult to focus on her exact outline. In her hands, she carried what looked like a Barrett M82 .50 caliber sniper rifle, a weapon that should have been impossible for someone to fire accurately while partially submerged in a lake. But it was her eyes that made Elena's blood run cold. Even at a distance of several hundred meters, even through military-grade field glasses, there was something about those eyes that seemed to pierce straight through to the soul. They were the eyes of someone who had seen death up close and personal, who had dispensed it with clinical precision, and who carried the weight of countless lives taken in service to something greater than themselves. "Jesus Christ," breathed Corporal Rodriguez, his usual bravado completely absent. "Are you guys seeing this? Please tell me you're seeing this too." The figure, this ghost sniper who had just eliminated an entire Taliban unit with surgical precision, stood waist-deep in the dark waters of Serpent Lake for several long moments, her head turning slowly as if scanning the surrounding mountains for additional threats. Elena found herself holding her breath, afraid that even the slightest movement might draw those penetrating eyes in their direction. Elena's radio crackled again with Lieutenant Colonel Harrison's increasingly urgent voice. "Phantom 6, I need a full report. We've got 18 enemy KIA down there and nobody can explain how it happened. Are you telling me there's another friendly unit operating in your area without my knowledge?" Elena pressed the transmit button, her voice carefully controlled despite the chaos of emotions raging through her mind. "Reaper Actual, this is Phantom 6. Negative on friendly units in our immediate area. We have We have visual contact with an unknown sniper approximately 400 meters from our position near the lake. Individual appears to be female, carrying what looks like a Barrett 50 cal. She's standing in the lake, sir. She emerged from the water after engaging the Taliban unit. The radio silence that followed Elena's report seemed to stretch for an eternity. When Lieutenant Colonel Harrison's voice finally came back over the frequency, it carried a tone that Elena had never heard from the normally unflappable officer. A mixture of disbelief and something that sounded almost like fear. Phantom 6, say again your last transmission. Did you say the shooter emerged from the water? That's affirmative, sir. Unknown sniper emerged from Serpent Lake after eliminating all 18 enemy personnel. She's still in position, maintaining overwatch on the area. Another long pause, then this. Phantom 6, maintain your current position and continue observation. Do not, repeat, do not attempt to make contact with the unknown individual. I'm dispatching Quick Reaction Force 2 to your location. ETA 15 minutes. As Elena acknowledged the order, she watched the mysterious sniper begin to move through the water toward the shoreline where the Taliban bodies were scattered like broken dolls. Her movement through the water created barely a ripple, as if she weighed no more than morning mist. When she reached the shore, she began moving among the bodies with professional efficiency, checking each one to ensure they were dead, collecting weapons and intelligence materials with the methodical thoroughness of a seasoned special operations soldier. Staff Sergeant, my grandmother used to tell stories about spirits of dead warriors who protected sacred places. She said they could take physical form when their homeland was threatened, that they would rise from lakes and rivers to defend what was holy. I never believed her until now. Elena found herself thinking about her own grandmother, her abuela, who had filled Elena's childhood with stories of La Llorona and other supernatural beings from Mexican folklore. She had always dismissed such tales as superstition, the product of minds that needed to find meaning in a world that often seemed random and cruel. But watching this impossible figure moving with deadly purpose along the shoreline of Serpent Lake, Elena began to wonder if perhaps her grandmother had been trying to prepare her for something exactly like this. The ghost sniper, for Elena could think of no other name for her, completed her sweep of the Taliban positions and began walking back toward the water. As she did, she turned toward Elena's position and raised one hand in what appeared to be a brief salute. Then, as impossible as it seemed, she walked backward into the water until the dark water closed over her head and she disappeared completely beneath the surface. Elena immediately swept the area with her field glasses, searching for any sign of where the mysterious sniper had gone. The water showed no disturbance, no air bubbles, no indication that anyone had ever been there. The only evidence of her presence was the 18 dead Taliban fighters scattered along the shoreline and the lingering smell of cordite that drifted across the water on the morning breeze. Did she just disappear? Whispered Private Mitchell, her young voice filled with an awe that bordered on terror. Before Elena could answer, the distinctive sound of approaching helicopters filled the valley as Quick Reaction Force 2 arrived to investigate the impossible scene at Serpent Lake. As Elena prepared to brief the incoming Marines on what they had witnessed, she found herself wondering how she could possibly explain something that defied every natural law she thought she understood. What Elena didn't know was that this encounter was only the beginning of a mystery that would lead her deep into classified government files, forgotten military operations, and a truth about the war in Afghanistan that would shake her understanding of reality to its very foundations.
The arrival of Quick Reaction Force 2 brought with it the controlled chaos that Elena had come to associate with extraordinary circumstances in a war zone. 2 UH-60 Blackhawks settled onto the valley floor in clouds of dust and rotor wash, disgorging 20 Marines led by Major Patricia Stone, a no-nonsense officer whose reputation for getting to the bottom of unusual situations had earned her the nickname the Bloodhound throughout the battalion. Major Stone was the kind of Marine who had clawed her way up through the ranks by being smarter, tougher, and more relentless than anyone around her. At 35, she had already served 4 combat tours and held a master's degree in military intelligence from Georgetown University. Her steel-gray eyes and prematurely silver hair gave her an air of authority that made even seasoned NCOs like Elena stand a little straighter in her presence. As the helicopters lifted off and disappeared over the mountain ridges, Major Stone strode directly to Elena's position with the purposeful gait of someone accustomed to command. Behind her followed Captain James McNulty, the battalion intelligence officer, a thin, nervous man whose academic demeanor often made him seem out of place in the rugged environment of FOB Reaper, but whose analytical mind had proven invaluable in understanding the complex web of tribal politics and insurgent activity that define this region of Afghanistan. Staff Sergeant Vasquez, Major Stone's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. I need you to walk me through exactly what you and your team witnessed here. I've read your initial report, but frankly, it sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie. I need details, specifics, and I need them now. Elena came to attention and began her briefing with the professional precision that had served her well throughout her career. She described the initial observation of the Taliban unit, the impossibly accurate sniper fire that had eliminated all 18 fighters, and the appearance of the mysterious female shooter who had emerged from Serpent Lake like something from a nightmare or a dream. As Elena spoke, she watched Major Stone's expression carefully. The Major's face remained impassive throughout most of the briefing, but Elena noticed a slight tightening around her eyes when she described the ghost sniper's emergence from the water and her subsequent disappearance beneath the surface. Staff Sergeant, Elena interrupted when Elena reached the part about the mysterious salute. Are you absolutely certain this individual emerged from the lake itself? Not from cover near the shoreline, not from behind one of the willow trees, but actually from the water? Yes, ma'am. All 4 members of my team witnessed it. She rose from the water near the base of the willow tree at approximately grid coordinates. Elena rattled off the precise location with military efficiency. Captain McNulty had been scribbling notes furiously throughout Elena's briefing. Now he looked up from his notebook, his pale face even more drawn than usual. Major, if I may, there's something you need to know about this location. Serpent Lake has been flagged in our intelligence files for unusual activity. We've had 3 previous reports of inexplicable sniper attacks in this area over the past 6 months, all with similar characteristics. Impossible accuracy, no identifiable shooter, and enemy casualties that seem to defy conventional explanation. Major Stone's steel-gray eyes fixed on the intelligence officer with laser-like intensity. And why am I just hearing about this now, Captain? Ma'am, the reports were classified at a level above my clearance. I only became aware of them yesterday when I was preparing background intelligence for today's operation. Someone higher up the chain of command has been tracking these incidents, but the information hasn't been disseminated to field commanders. Elena felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the mountain air. The idea that her encounter with the ghost sniper was part of a larger pattern of unexplained events suggested something far more significant than a single isolated incident. She found herself wondering just how deep this mystery went and who else might be involved. Major Stone turned back to Elena with an expression that mixed professional skepticism with growing concern. Staff Sergeant, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. In your 8 years as a Marine, you've served in some of the most intense combat situations our military has faced. You've been under extreme stress, witnessed things that would break most people, and dealt with the constant threat of death. Is it possible, and I'm not questioning your integrity or your sanity, is it possible that what you and your team witnessed was some kind of stress-induced hallucination or misperception of events? Elena met Major Stone's gaze without flinching. Ma'am, with all due respect,
I've considered that possibility. But all 4 members of my team saw the same thing. We all witnessed the sniper fire coming from the area of the willow tree. We all saw the figure emerge from the water, and we all observed her systematic elimination of the Taliban unit. Additionally, ma'am, 18 enemy fighters are dead down there with precision shots that came from a position no conventional sniper could have occupied. Major Stone nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. Very well. Captain McNulty, I want you to contact battalion headquarters and request immediate access to those classified files you mentioned. Use my authorization code if necessary. We need to understand what we are dealing with here. As Captain McNulty moved away to make his calls, Major Stone gestured toward the shoreline where the Taliban bodies lay scattered like fallen leaves. Staff Sergeant, I want your team to accompany mine down to the lake. We're going to examine those bodies and see if we can find any evidence that might explain what happened here. The descent to the shoreline took 20 minutes of careful movement over treacherous terrain. The rocks were slick with morning dew, and the ancient goat paths that zigzagged down the mountainside were barely wide enough for a single person. As they approached the water's edge, she found herself studying every shadow, every ripple on the lake's surface, wondering if the ghost sniper was still somewhere nearby, watching them with those penetrating eyes. The Taliban bodies told a story of precision and professionalism that made Elena's blood run cold. Every shot had been perfectly placed, center mass hits that would have killed instantly, with no wasted ammunition and no signs of the panic firing that typically characterized insurgent engagements. These were the shots of someone who had trained for years to deliver death with surgical precision, someone who viewed killing as not an emotional release, but as a technical problem to be solved with mathematical accuracy. Major, you need to see this, called out Sergeant First Class Williams, one of Major Stone's team leaders. He was crouched beside the body of what appeared to have been the Taliban unit's leader, a bearded man in his 40s whose military-style vest and expensive equipment suggested he was indeed the high-value target that intelligence had identified. Major, and Elena approached Williams' position, where the sergeant was examining something that gleamed in the morning sunlight. It was a spent bass casing, still warm to the touch, despite the fact that the shooting had stopped nearly an hour ago. Ma'am, this is a .50 caliber BMG casing, exactly what you'd expect from a Barrett rifle. But here's the weird part. It's completely dry. No water damage, no corrosion, nothing to suggest it spent any time submerged in the lake that should have surrounded the shooter's position.
As Major Stone's team continued their examination of the Taliban bodies and the surrounding area, Elena found herself drawn to the ancient willow tree where the ghost sniper had first appeared. Something about the gnarled old tree called to her, as if it held secrets that needed to be uncovered. The closer she got to the water's edge, the more she felt a strange tingling sensation, like static electricity building before a thunderstorm. The willow's massive trunk was easily 6 feet in diameter, its bark scarred and weathered by centuries of mountain storms. Its branches drooped so low that they formed a natural canopy over the water, creating a shadowy sanctuary that could have hidden an army. As Elena examined the tree more closely, she noticed something that made her heart race. Carved into the ancient bark, about 7 feet off the ground, were symbols that looked almost like military insignia, but in a style she had never seen before. Major Stone, Elena called out, her voice tight with excitement and apprehension. You need to see this. Major Stone and Captain McNulty hurried to Elena's position, followed by several other Marines. They stood in a semicircle around the base of the willow tree, staring up at the strange markings that Elena had discovered. Captain, have you ever seen anything like these symbols before? Major Stone asked, her professional curiosity clearly engaged. McNulty studied the carvings through a magnifying glass he had produced from his field kit. Ma'am, they appear to be some kind of military designation, but the style is unlike anything in current use by coalition forces or known enemy organizations. The craftsmanship suggests they're quite old, possibly decades. Elena ran her fingers over the carved symbols, feeling the deep grooves that had been cut into the living wood with obvious care and precision. As she traced the markings, she could swear she felt a warmth emanating from them.
as if the tree itself was somehow alive with purpose and memory. "Staff Sergeant," Major Stone's voice carried a note of urgency, "I need you and your team to set up a perimeter while we document the scene. Something about this whole situation feels wrong, and I don't want us to be caught off guard if there are other hostile forces in the area." Elena acknowledged the order and was turning to deploy her Marines when she heard it. A sound. So faint it was almost subliminal, like a whisper carried on the wind. She paused, straining her ears, trying to determine if she had really heard something or if her imagination was playing tricks on her. There it was again, a voice, definitely female, speaking words in a language Elena didn't recognize but somehow understood. The voice seemed to be coming from the direction of the lake, but when Elena looked toward the water, she saw only the dark, still surface reflecting the gray October sky. "Did anyone else hear that?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Private Mitchell, who was closest to Elena's position, nodded slowly. "Yes, Staff Sergeant, it sounded like someone calling for help, but not in English, and it seemed to be coming from underwater." Before Elena could respond, the voice came again, clearer this time and unmistakably urgent. Without thinking, Elena found herself walking toward the water's edge, drawn by something she couldn't explain or resist. The rational part of her mind screamed warnings about unknown threats and proper tactical procedures, but a deeper part of her, some ancient instinct that predated military training in modern warfare, compelled her forward. "Vasquez!" Major Stone's sharp command cut through Elena's trance-like state. "Stand down. Do not approach the water." Elena stopped at the very edge of the lake, her boots sinking slightly into the muddy shore. The water was so clear she could see straight down for several feet before it disappeared into mysterious black depths. Fish moved lazily through the underwater vegetation, and everything appeared perfectly normal, except for the voice that continued to whisper words of warning and urgency that Elena somehow understood despite never having heard the language before. "Ma'am, someone's down there. Someone who needs help." "Staff Sergeant, that's impossible. We've been watching this lake for over an hour. No one has gone into the water, and no one could survive submerged for that length of time." But as Major Stone spoke, ripples began to appear on the surface of Serpent Lake. Small at first, like those created by feeding fish, but growing larger and more purposeful. Elena watched in fascination as the ripples formed a pattern, moving in concentric circles that seemed to be centered directly beneath where she stood. Captain McNulty appeared at Elena's side, his notebook forgotten as he stared at the mysterious ripples. "This is scientifically impossible," he muttered. "Water doesn't behave this way without some kind of external force creating the disturbance." The ripples grew larger, and suddenly the voice in the water became crystal clear. It was speaking in English now, with an accent Elena couldn't quite place, but which sounded vaguely familiar. "You must know the truth about what happened here. They died protecting something more important than their own lives. They died protecting America." Elena felt her breath catch in her throat. "Who died? Who are you talking about?" The voice continued, now with an urgency that made Elena's heart pound. "The lake remembers everything. The lake keeps the memories of those who served with honor. Look beneath the surface, daughter of warriors. Look and understand." Without warning, the water began to glow with a soft blue-green light that seemed to emanate from the depths of the lake. Elena had never seen anything like it. A bioluminescence that pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat, growing brighter and brighter until the entire surface of Serpent Lake was illuminated like a natural aurora. "Jesus Christ!" breathed Sergeant Williams, his tough exterior cracking in the face of something that defied every natural law he thought he understood. "Ma'am, I have served 3 tours, seen everything from IEDs to chemical weapons, but this is something else entirely." Major Stone moved to Elena's side, her hand instinctively resting on her sidearm, even though she knew that whatever they were facing couldn't be fought with conventional weapons. "Elena, I need you to step back from the water. Now." But Elena couldn't move. The glowing water held her transfixed, and in its luminescent depths, she began to see shapes forming. At first they were indistinct, like shadows moving behind a frosted window, but gradually they became clearer, more defined, until Elena realized she was looking at human figures moving through the underwater landscape of Serpent Lake. They wore military uniforms, but not contemporary ones. These were the uniforms of an earlier era, World War II vintage, with equipment and insignia that Elena recognized from history books and war movies. The figures moved with purpose and precision, carrying out what appeared to be some kind of military operation on the lake bottom.
As Elena watched the underwater tableau unfold before her amazed eyes, she began to understand that she was witnessing something extraordinary, a glimpse into the past, preserved somehow in the mysterious waters of Serpent Lake. The figures she saw were not ghosts in the traditional sense, but rather memories given form. Echoes of events that had occurred decades ago, but which somehow lived on in this remote Afghan valley. The lead figure among the underwater soldiers was unmistakably female, tall and lean, with the same fluid movements Elena had observed in the Ghost Sniper. She wore the uniform of a World War II-era female military specialist, complete with insignia that Elena didn't recognize, but which clearly denoted high rank and specialized training. The woman moved among her team with the easy confidence of a natural leader, directing their activities with hand signals and tactical precision that would have impressed any modern special operations commander. "Captain McNulty?" Major Stone's voice was tight with barely controlled amazement. "I need you to document everything we're seeing here. I don't care how impossible it seems. I want every detail recorded." McNulty was already sketching frantically in his notebook, his academic training overriding his shock at witnessing something that challenged every assumption he had about the nature of reality. "Major, what we're seeing appears to be some kind of temporal echo, a replay of events that occurred in this location at some point in the past. The question is, how is this possible? And why is it happening now?" Elena found herself thinking about her grandmother's stories again. Tales of places where the veil between worlds was thin, where the past and present could intersect in ways that defied modern understanding. Her abuela had always insisted that certain locations, especially those where great emotions had been experienced, where life and death decisions had been made, could hold memories like a recording device, playing them back under the right circumstances. The underwater scene continued to unfold with cinematic clarity. Elena watched as the female team leader directed her soldiers in what appeared to be the placement of some kind of equipment at strategic points around the lake bottom. The devices they were installing looked advanced for World War II technology, sleek, compact instruments that seemed more appropriate for the space age than the 1940s. "Staff Sergeant?" Private Mitchell's voice was filled with awe and confusion. "Are we looking at some kind of classified World War II operation? Because if we are, this changes everything we thought we knew about the history of this region." Elena nodded slowly, her mind racing as she tried to process the implications of what she was witnessing. Afghanistan had been relatively untouched by World War II, serving as a buffer state between the Soviet Union and British India. The idea that American military personnel had conducted classified operations in this remote valley during the 1940s challenged everything she thought she knew about both the war and the history of U.S. involvement in Central Asia. As the underwater vision continued to unfold, Elena noticed that the female team leader was carrying what appeared to be documents or maps in a waterproof case. The woman moved with obvious urgency, frequently checking what looked like a primitive but sophisticated timing device strapped to her wrist. Whatever operation this team was conducting, it was clearly time-sensitive and of critical importance. Suddenly, the underwater scene changed dramatically. Elena watched in horror as explosions began erupting around the team of World War II soldiers. The water filled with debris and silt, making it difficult to see exactly what was happening, but it was clear that the operation had gone
terribly wrong. Enemy forces, their uniforms suggested they might be German or possibly Soviet troops, had discovered the American team and were attacking with ruthless efficiency. The female team leader fought with desperate courage, her weapon cutting down attackers as her own people fell around her. She could see the woman making impossible shots, hitting targets at ranges and angles that defied belief. But even her extraordinary skills couldn't overcome the odds they faced. One by one, her team members fell until only she remained, fighting a last-ditch battle in the depths of Serpent Lake. "My God," whispered Major Stone, "we're watching these people die. This isn't just a historical echo. We're witnessing the final moments of what must have been a highly classified Allied operation." Elena watched transfixed as the female soldier, this ghost sniper from another era, made her last stand. Wounded and outnumbered, she continued to fight with a determination that transcended mere duty or training. This was someone fighting not just for her own survival, but for something much larger, for her country, for freedom, for the future generations who would inherit the world she was dying to protect. The underwater battle reached its climax as the female soldier, her ammunition exhausted and her strength failing, made one final desperate move. She activated some kind of device, possibly the same equipment her team had been installing around the lake bottom, and Elena watched as a brilliant flash of light erupted through the water, so bright it momentarily blinded everyone on the shoreline. When Elena's vision cleared, the underwater scene had vanished. Serpent Lake had returned to its normal, placid surface, its dark surface reflecting only clouds and sky. But something had changed. She could feel it in the air, in the water, in the very stones beneath her feet. The lake had revealed its secret, shared its memory, and in doing so had passed along a responsibility that Elena was only beginning to understand. "Did everyone see what I just saw?" Major Stone's voice carried a note of desperation, as if she needed confirmation that she hadn't lost her grip on reality. Captain McNulty nodded grimly, still scribbling notes even though his hands were shaking. "Ma'am, I documented everything, but I have to tell you, nothing in my intelligence training prepared me for something like this. If what we witnessed was accurate, then there was a highly classified Allied operation conducted in this location during World War II, an operation that ended in disaster with the entire team killed in action." Elena found herself staring at the water where the impossible vision had unfolded, her mind struggling to connect what she had seen with the ghost sniper who had eliminated the Taliban unit earlier that morning. Was the mysterious female shooter somehow connected to the World War II soldier they had watched die in the depths of Serpent Lake over 70 years ago? The voice in the water spoke one final time, so softly that Elena had to strain to hear it. "She never left her post, daughter of warriors. She never abandoned her mission. When America's enemies threaten this sacred ground, she rises to defend it. And now, she has chosen you to carry on the fight." Elena felt a chill run through her entire body as the implications of those words sank in. Somehow, someway, the ghost sniper had not only saved them from the Taliban attack, she had also chosen Elena to become part of whatever ancient mission had brought her team to this remote valley so many decades ago. As Major Stone began organizing the team for their return to FOB Reaper, Elena took one last look at the mysterious willow tree and the dark waters of Serpent Lake. She had entered this valley as a Marine Staff Sergeant conducting a routine patrol. She was leaving as someone who had been touched by forces beyond her understanding, choosing for a purpose she didn't yet comprehend, but which she knew would change the course of her life forever. The helicopter ride back to base was conducted in relative silence, each Marine lost in their own thoughts about what they had witnessed. But Elena spent the flight studying the carved symbols she had photographed at the willow tree, symbols that seemed to pulse with meaning just beyond her grasp. She had a feeling that understanding those markings would be the key to unlocking the mystery of the ghost sniper and the secret mission that had brought a team of Allied soldiers to their deaths in the waters of Serpent Lake over 70 years ago.
Back at FOB Reaper, Elena found herself unable to concentrate on the routine tasks that normally occupied her days. The debriefing with Lieutenant Colonel Harrison had been surreal. How do you explain to a career military officer that you've witnessed what appears to be a supernatural guardian protecting American interests in a remote Afghan valley? To his credit, Harrison had listened to every word without interruption, his weathered face growing more thoughtful with each impossible detail. "Staff Sergeant," Harrison had said when the debriefing concluded, "I've been a Marine for 22 years. I've seen things in Iraq and Afghanistan that would make most people question their sanity, but what you're describing, this goes beyond anything in my experience. I'm going to make some calls to people who might have answers. Until then, I need you and your team to maintain operational security about today's events. Not a word to anyone outside this room." Elena had acknowledged the order, but she knew that keeping silent about the ghost sniper would be one of the most difficult challenges she had ever faced. The image of the mysterious female soldier rising from Serpent Lake was burned into her memory like a brand, and the voice from the water continued to echo in her mind. "She has chosen you to carry on the fight." That evening, as Elena sat in her quarters, cleaning her weapons with the meditative precision that had become second nature over her years of service, she found herself thinking about her family's military history. Her grandfather, Miguel Vasquez, had served with the Army's 442nd Infantry Regiment during World War II, the famous Go for Broke unit, composed primarily of Japanese-American soldiers who had fought with extraordinary courage in the European theater, despite facing discrimination at home. Elena had grown up hearing stories of her grandfather's service, tales of impossible battles won through sheer determination and sacrifice. Miguel had rarely spoken about the classified missions he had undertaken as part of a special reconnaissance unit, operations that had taken him behind enemy lines in some of the most dangerous theaters of the war. But Elena's grandmother had whispered hints of adventures that went far beyond conventional warfare, missions that involved ancient sites, mysterious artifacts, and encounters with forces that existed outside the normal understanding of military conflict. As Elena methodically field-stripped her M4 carbine, she couldn't shake the feeling that her encounter at Serpent Lake was somehow connected to her grandfather's wartime service. The female soldier she had seen in the underwater vision had carried herself with the same quiet confidence that Elena remembered from the few photographs of her grandfather in uniform. There was a similarity in their bearing, their tactical awareness, their obvious competence in situations that would have broken lesser individuals. Elena's contemplation was interrupted by a knock at her quarters door. She opened it to find Captain McNulty standing in the corridor, his normally pale complexion even more drawn than usual. The intelligence officer was carrying a manila folder marked with classification stamps that Elena recognized as indicating extremely sensitive material. "Staff Sergeant Vasquez," McNulty said quietly. "Colonel Harrison asked me to brief you on what we've discovered about today's incident. May I come in?" Elena stepped aside to allow McNulty into her small quarters, noting that the captain kept glancing over his shoulder as if afraid of being overheard. Once inside, with the door securely closed, McNulty set the classified folder on Elena's small desk and opened it to reveal a collection of documents, photographs, and what appeared to be historical records dating back several decades. "What I'm about to show you," McNulty began, "is classified at levels that go far above both our clearances. Colonel Harrison had to use considerable influence to obtain access to these files, and he's doing so based on his assessment that you and your team may have stumbled into something of national security significance." The first document McNulty showed Elena was a mission briefing dated September 15th, 1943. The paper was yellowed with age, but the typewritten text was still clearly legible. Elena's eyes widened as she read the operation name: Ghost Watch, Serpent Lake Reconnaissance and Equipment Placement. The mission commander was listed as Major Catherine Ghost Riley, U.S. Army Special Operations, attached to the Office of Strategic Services. "Jesus," Elena breathed. "This is the woman we saw in the lake."
McNulty nodded grimly. Major Catherine Riley was one of the most accomplished snipers and special operations soldiers of World War II, although her service record was classified so deeply that she essentially became a ghost herself. According to these files, she was selected for a series of ultra-secret missions that took her to locations around the world where the OSS believed ancient sites might hold strategic value. Elena studied the photographed clip to Major Riley's service record. The resemblance between the woman in the World War II-era military portrait and the ghost sniper she had seen emerging from Serpent Lake was unmistakable. Same intelligent eyes, same determined jawline, and same aura of quiet competence that marked natural warriors. But the photograph was over 70 years old. How could the same person be operating in modern-day Afghanistan? Captain, Elena said tearfully, what exactly was Operation Ghost Watch supposed to accomplish? McNulty turned to another document in the folder, this one marked with so many classification stamps that Elena wondered if they should even be looking at it. According to the mission parameters, Major Riley's team was tasked with investigating reports of unusual electromagnetic phenomena in the Kunar Province. Intelligence suggested that certain geographical locations in the region might possess properties that could be militarily significant: natural amplification of radio communications, unusual mineral deposits, possibly even primitive radar masking capabilities. Elena found herself thinking about the strange tingling sensation she had felt near the willow tree, the way the water had glowed with that ethereal blue-green light. Did they find what they were looking for? That's where the official record gets interesting, McNulty replied, flipping to a heavily redacted report. The last transmission from Major Riley's team was received on September 23, 1943. They reported successful installation of monitoring equipment around Serpent Lake and confirmed the existence of what they described as anomalous energy readings in the area. Then, nothing. The team simply disappeared. Elena studied the final mission report, noting the clinical language that failed to capture the human tragedy she had witnessed in the underwater vision. What was the official explanation for their disappearance? Killed in action by enemy forces, German mountain troops operating in the region as part of their alliance with certain Afghan tribal leaders. The bodies were never recovered and the monitoring equipment was presumed destroyed. Operation Ghost Watch was classified beyond top secret and essentially erased from official military history. McNulty closed the folder and looked directly at Elena with an expression that mixed professional skepticism with growing belief. Staff Sergeant, based on what you and your team witnessed today, I'm beginning to think that Major Riley and her people never really left Serpent Lake. Somehow, someway, they're still carrying out their mission, still protecting that site from hostile forces. Elena felt a chill run down her spine as she considered the implications. You're saying that the ghost sniper who eliminated those Taliban fighters was Major Catherine Riley, a woman who's been dead for over 70 years? I'm saying that what we witnessed today suggests forces at work that go beyond conventional military understanding. The question is, what do we do with this information? Before Elena could respond, both Marines heard the distinctive sounds of helicopters approaching FOB Reaper. Through her small window, Elena could see the lights of what appeared to be several aircraft, more than would be typical for a routine supply run or medical evacuation. The aircraft were unmarked, black helicopters that Elena recognized as the type used for the most sensitive special operations missions. McNulty peered through his window alongside Elena, his face growing pale as he recognized the implications of what they were seeing. Those aren't regular military aircraft. Someone very high up the chain of command is taking a personal interest in today's events. Elena quickly secured her weapons and prepared to report to the command bunker, knowing that whatever was about to unfold would likely determine whether the mystery of the ghost sniper remained a secret known only to her team or became part of something much larger and more dangerous.
The black helicopters settled onto FOB Reaper's landing zone with military precision, their unmarked silhouettes barely visible against the star-filled Afghan night. Elena watched from the command bunker as a team of individuals disembarked, men and women in civilian clothes whose movements and bearing clearly marked them as military professionals of the highest caliber. Their leader was a woman in her 50s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the base's layout with a single sweeping glance. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison appeared at Elena's side, his expression tense with the kind of controlled stress that came from dealing with situations far above his normal operational parameters. Staff Sergeant Vasquez, you're about to meet some people who have been waiting a very long time to hear about what you experienced at Serpent Lake. I want you to answer their questions honestly, but remember that everything you're about to hear is classified at levels that could affect national security. The silver-haired woman approached the command bunker with purposeful strides, flanked by two men whose appearance suggested they were accustomed to operating in the shadows of America's most sensitive military operations. As they entered the bunker, Elena noticed that each of them wore a small insignia that she didn't recognize, a symbol that looked remarkably similar to the carvings she had seen on the willow tree at Serpent Lake. Staff Sergeant Vasquez. The woman's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to command at the highest levels. I'm Director Sarah Mitchell. No relation to your Private Mitchell. I represent a joint task force that has been monitoring unusual incidents in this region for several decades. I understand you've had an extraordinary experience today. Elena came to attention, noting that Director Mitchell had not specified which agency or military branch she represented. In her experience, when senior officials were vague about their organizational affiliations, it usually meant they worked for groups that didn't officially exist. Yes, ma'am. My team and I witnessed events at Serpent Lake that challenged our understanding of normal military operations. Director Mitchell smiled, an expression that didn't quite reach her eyes, but suggested she had heard similar reports before. Staff Sergeant, what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I need you to listen carefully because it will help you understand what you've become involved in. Operation Ghost Watch didn't end in 1943 when Major Catherine Riley's team disappeared. It evolved into something much larger, an ongoing mission to monitor and protect certain locations around the world where natural phenomena intersect with national security interests. Elena felt her heart rate increase as the implications of Mitchell's words began to sink in. Ma'am, are you saying that Major Riley is still alive? I'm saying that Major Catherine Riley never truly died, at least not in any conventional sense. The electromagnetic anomalies at Serpent Lake, the same properties that made the location strategically valuable during World War II, have a preservative effect that we still don't fully understand. Major Riley and her team exist in a state that transcends normal definitions of life and death, bound to their mission by forces that combine advanced physics with something approaching the supernatural. One of Mitchell's companions, a man with the weathered features of a career special operations soldier, stepped forward and opened a briefcase containing what appeared to be sophisticated monitoring equipment. Staff Sergeant, we've been tracking energy signatures from Serpent Lake for over 70 years. Every time hostile forces threaten the strategic balance in this region, the readings spike, and we receive reports of unexplained sniper activity. Major Riley and her team have been protecting American interests in Central Asia since before the Cold War began. Elena struggled to process this information while maintaining her professional composure. Director Mitchell, what does this have to do with me and my team? Mitchell's expression became more serious, and Elena noticed that everyone in the command bunker had fallen silent, as if waiting for an announcement of critical importance. Staff Sergeant, based on your family's military history and your own service record, we believe you've been selected by Major Riley to join her mission. The voice you heard in the lake, the vision you witnessed, the fact that she revealed herself to you and your team, these aren't random occurrences. You've been chosen to become part of Operation Ghost Watch. Elena felt a chill run through her entire body. Ma'am, I don't understand. How can I join a mission with people who died 70 years ago? Because they didn't die, Staff Sergeant. They transcended normal existence to become something more. Guardian spirits, if you will, bound by duty and honor to continue serving their country even beyond death. The energy field at Serpent Lake doesn't just preserve them, it selects new recruits when the mission requires expanded capabilities. Director Mitchell gestured toward the briefcase her companion held, which Elena now realized contained instruments designed to measure the same type of electromagnetic phenomena that had brought Major Riley's team to Serpent Lake in the first place. We've been monitoring your vital signs and brainwave patterns since your encounter at the lake. You're showing the same energy signature that we've learned to associate with individuals who have been touched by the anomaly. In simple terms, Staff Sergeant, you're beginning to change. Elena's mind reeled as she tried to understand what Mitchell was telling her. Change how, ma'am?
Enhanced reflexes, improved sensory perception, tactical awareness that goes beyond normal human capabilities. The same characteristics that allowed Major Riley to become one of history's greatest snipers. You've been chosen to inherit those abilities and to help expand Operation Ghostwatch into the modern era. Elena looked around the command bunker at the faces of her fellow Marines, noting expressions that ranged from awe to confusion to barely concealed fear. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison nodded encouragingly, but Elena could see the tension in his eyes. This conversation was moving into territory that none of them had been prepared to navigate. Director Mitchell, Elena said carefully, what exactly would joining Operation Ghostwatch involve? Mitchell's companion produced a tablet computer and began displaying what appeared to be global satellite imagery marked with energy readings and incident reports. Staff Sergeant, hostile forces around the world are becoming increasingly aware of locations like Serpent Lake, sites where natural phenomena can be weaponized or where ancient knowledge intersects with modern strategic interests. We need operatives who can work both in the physical world and in the expanded reality that exists around these anomaly sites. Elena studied the satellite imagery, noting markers in locations across 6 continents. Each site showed the same type of electromagnetic readings they had detected at Serpent Lake, and each was associated with reports of unexplained military activity, phantom snipers, impossible tactical victories, enemy forces eliminated by unknown shooters who seemed to appear and disappear at will. Ma'am, are you saying there are others like Major Riley at these other sites? We're saying that Operation Ghostwatch has been protecting American interests through unconventional means for over 70 years, and we're at a point where the mission needs to expand. The world is becoming more dangerous, and conventional military force isn't always sufficient to address the threats we face. Director Mitchell closed the tablet and looked directly at Elena with an intensity that made it clear this was more than a briefing. It was a recruitment pitch for something that would fundamentally change her understanding of military service and her place in the world.
Elena spent the next hour in the most extraordinary briefing of her military career, learning about a world that existed parallel to the conventional war in Afghanistan, a shadow conflict fought by operatives who transcended normal human limitations and protected sites of strategic importance that weren't marked on any official maps. Director Mitchell's team showed her classified footage from locations around the globe where similar phenomena had been documented. Ancient temples in Southeast Asia where enemy forces had been eliminated by invisible defenders, mountain passes in South America where drug cartels had encountered supernatural resistance, remote islands in the Pacific where hostile naval forces had been turned back by impossibly accurate shore fire. The pattern is always the same, explained Mitchell's technical specialist, a woman whose academic demeanor reminded Elena of Captain McNulty. Sites with unusual electromagnetic properties, locations where ancient civilizations built temples or conducted rituals, places where the normal rules of physics seem to bend or break. These locations naturally attract both hostile and friendly forces, and somehow they seem to choose guardians to protect them. Elena found herself thinking about her grandfather's wartime stories, the hints he had dropped about missions that went beyond conventional warfare. Director Mitchell, how long has the U.S. military been aware of these phenomena? Officially, we're not. Operation Ghostwatch exists in the spaces between agencies, funded to black budgets and staffed by personnel who have been carefully selected for their unique capabilities and psychological profiles. The operation began during World War II when the OSS started investigating reports of supernatural activity at strategic locations, but it has evolved far beyond anything the original planners could have imagined. Elena studied a map that showed the global distribution of anomaly sites, noting that many were located in regions of ongoing conflict or strategic importance. Ma'am, what would my role be if I agreed to join this operation? Mitchell exchanged glances with her companions before responding, a gesture that suggested they were entering the most sensitive part of their discussion. Staff Sergeant,
Based on your encounter with Major Riley and your family's military heritage, we believe you have the potential to become what we call a bridge operative, someone who can function both in normal military operations and in the expanded reality that exists around anomaly sites. You would continue your regular Marine duties while also serving as our primary liaison with Major Riley's team. Elena felt a chill as she realized the implications. You're asking me to work with the ghost sniper on a regular basis. We're asking you to help expand her mission into the 21st century. The threats facing these sites are evolving. Terrorist groups with sophisticated technology, foreign intelligence services that have learned to weaponize anomalous phenomena, criminal organizations that seek to exploit these locations for their own purposes. Major Riley and her team have been fighting alone for 70 years. They need support from operatives who understand modern warfare. Elena looked around the command bunker at her fellow Marines, noting that Lieutenant Colonel Harrison was nodding encouragingly, while Captain McNulty appeared to be taking detailed notes. The weight of the decision she was being asked to make pressed down on her like a physical force. What would happen to my team, to my Marines? They would remain under your command and would be briefed into the operation at an appropriate level. Private Mitchell, in particular, has shown signs of sensitivity to the anomaly fields. She might eventually become a candidate for expanded training herself. Elena thought about Sarah Mitchell, barely 19 years old, fresh from the mountains of Montana, already proven in combat, but still young enough to believe in possibilities that older, more cynical Marines had learned to dismiss. The idea of exposing her to the supernatural forces that surrounded Serpent Lake filled Elena with both protective concern and professional excitement. Director Mitchell, I need to ask you something directly. Are Major Riley and her team really dead, or are they something else entirely? Mitchell paused for several long moments before answering, as if choosing his words very carefully. Staff Sergeant, they exist in a state that transcends our normal understanding of life and death. They retain their consciousness, their memories, their tactical capabilities, and their dedication to their mission. Whether you call that alive or dead is largely a matter of philosophical perspective. What matters is that they continue to serve their country with the same courage and effectiveness they demonstrated during World War II. Elena found herself remembering the voice in the water, the words that had echoed in her mind throughout the day. She has chosen you to carry on the fight. The more she learned about Operation Ghostwatch, the more she realized that her encounter at Serpent Lake had been the beginning of something that would define the rest of her military career. Ma'am, if I agree to join this operation, what guarantees do I have that my Marines will be protected, that they won't be put at unnecessary risk because of forces they don't understand? Mitchell's expression softened slightly, showing the first sign of genuine emotion Elena had seen from the mysterious director. Staff Sergeant, I won't lie to you. Working with anomaly sites involves risks that go beyond conventional warfare. But I will promise you this. Your Marines will receive the best training, equipment, and support that our operation can provide. And they will be serving their country in ways that could prevent conflicts before they begin, protect American interests in regions where conventional forces can't operate, and maintain strategic advantages that have kept us safe for over 70 years. Elena looked out through the command bunker's small window at the mountains surrounding FOB Reaper, thinking about all the Marines who had served and died in this harsh landscape. She thought about her grandfather's service, about the stories her grandmother had whispered, about the responsibility that came with being chosen for something greater than herself. When she turned back to Director Mitchell, Elena's voice carried the quiet determination that had made her one of the most respected NCOs in the battalion. Ma'am, I will need to discuss this with my team before I make a final decision, but I want you to know that if Major Riley really did choose me to carry on her mission, then I'm honored by that trust. Mitchell nodded with what appeared to be genuine respect. Staff Sergeant, that's exactly the response we hope to hear. Take the time you need to make your decision. Major Riley has been waiting 70 years for the right person to join her team. She can wait a little longer.
Elena spent the next morning in deep conversation with her team, sharing what she could about Operation Ghostwatch, while being careful not to violate the security restrictions Director Mitchell had imposed. The discussion took place in a secure briefing room where they could speak freely without fear of being overheard by other personnel at FOB Reaper. Private Mitchell, whose resemblance to Director Mitchell was purely coincidental, listened with the wide-eyed fascination of someone young enough to believe in extraordinary possibilities. "Staff Sergeant, are you saying that the ghost sniper who saved us yesterday was the same person who died in that lake 70 years ago?" "I'm saying that Major Catherine Riley and her team never truly left their mission. They've been protecting that site, and others like it, for decades. And now they're asking us to help expand their capabilities." Corporal Rodriguez, whose practical Detroit upbringing had given him a healthy skepticism toward anything that couldn't be measured or quantified, shook his head in amazement. "Sarge, I've seen some crazy stuff in 3 tours, but this tops everything. You're talking about working with actual ghosts?" "I'm talking about working with Marines who refused to abandon their post, Tank. Marines who have been serving their country longer than any of us have been alive, under conditions that we can barely imagine." Lance Corporal Peterson, the communication specialist, whose technical training had taught him to analyze problems logically, raised a concern that Elena had been expecting. "Staff Sergeant, what about our families, our futures after the Marine Corps? If we get involved in this classified operation, how does that affect our ability to return to civilian life?" Elena had wrestled with the same question throughout the night. "Ghost, I won't lie to you. Joining Operation Ghostwatch would change all of our lives in ways we can't predict. But I keep thinking about what Director Mitchell showed us, those sites around the world where American forces are facing threats that conventional military tactics can't handle. If we have an opportunity to serve our country in a new way, to protect American interests in ways that prevent larger conflicts, don't we have an obligation to consider it?" The discussion continued for over an hour, with each Marine raising questions and concerns that reflected their individual backgrounds and perspectives. But I could see that, despite their reservations, all 4 members of her team were beginning to feel the same pull she had experienced, the call to serve something greater than themselves, to be part of a mission that transcended normal military operations. It was Private Mitchell who finally articulated what they were all thinking. "Staff Sergeant, if Major Riley really did choose us for this mission, then maybe we don't really have a choice. Maybe this is what we've been training for all along, even if we didn't know it." Elena nodded slowly, recognizing the truth in the young Marine's words. "That's how I see it too, Mitchell. This isn't just about choosing a new assignment. It's about accepting a responsibility that comes with being Marines, with serving our country wherever and however we're needed." The decision, when it came, was unanimous. Elena's team voted to join Operation Ghostwatch and to accept whatever training and assignments Director Mitchell's organization had in store for them. That afternoon, Elena reported to Lieutenant Colonel Harrison and formally requested transfer to the classified operation that would take her team far beyond the conventional boundaries of military service. Harrison, who had been briefed on the full scope of Operation Ghostwatch, accepted their decision with a mixture of pride and concern. "Staff Sergeant, I've been a Marine long enough to recognize when something bigger than normal military operations is at work. You and your team have been chosen for something extraordinary, and I'm confident you'll serve with the same honor and dedication you've shown throughout your careers." That evening, as Elena prepared for what would be her last night at FOB Reaper, she found herself drawn once again to the perimeter overlooking Serpent Lake. The ancient body of water stretched before her in the moonlight, its dark surface reflecting stars that had witnessed centuries of human conflict and struggle. As Elena stood watching the lake, she heard the voice again, fainter than before, but unmistakably the same presence that had spoken to her from the water. "You have chosen well, daughter of warriors. Tomorrow, your real training begins. Tomorrow, you learn what it means to serve beyond the boundaries of life and death." Elena felt a warmth spread through her chest as she realized that accepting Director Mitchell's offer had been more than a career decision.
It had been an acceptance of her destiny, an acknowledgement of the path her family's military heritage had been preparing her to walk. Her grandfather's stories, her grandmother's whispered tales of supernatural guardians, her own instinctive understanding of warfare and tactics, all of it had been leading to this moment, this choice, this new beginning. The next morning brought the familiar sound of helicopters approaching FOB Reaper, but this time, Elena was ready for them. She and her team had packed their gear, said their farewells to fellow Marines, and prepared themselves for a journey into a world where the impossible became routine and where service to country extended far beyond the normal boundaries of military duty. As the black helicopters lifted off from FOB Reaper, carrying Elena and her team toward their new assignment with Operation Ghostwatch, she looked down at Serpent Lake one final time. In the morning sunlight, she could swear she saw a figure standing in the water, tall, lean, unmistakably female, watching their departure with what might have been approval. Elena knew that Major Catherine Riley was still down there, still protecting her assigned sector, still carrying out a mission that had begun during World War II and would continue as long as America needed guardians who were willing to serve beyond the boundaries of conventional warfare. And now Elena and her team were about to join that tradition, becoming part of a tradition that linked the supernatural with the sacred duty of military service.
6 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of a classified facility hidden deep in the Colorado Rockies, watching her team complete their latest training exercise with capabilities that would have seemed impossible during their days at FOB Reaper. The transformation they had undergone since joining Operation Ghostwatch went far beyond anything conventional military training could have achieved. Private Mitchell, now sporting the enhanced reflexes and sensory perception that came with prolonged exposure to anomaly fields, had become one of the most accurate marksmen Elena had ever seen. Her shots regularly hit targets at ranges that challenged the limits of physics, and her ability to sense hostile intentions before they were acted upon had saved the team during 3 separate encounters with enemy forces that conventional Marines never would have detected. Corporal Rodriguez had developed an almost supernatural ability to move through any terrain without making sound, his massive frame somehow becoming ghost-like when the mission required stealth. Lance Corporal Peterson's technical skills had expanded to include an intuitive understanding of the electromagnetic phenomena that surrounded anomaly sites, making him invaluable for the increasingly complex operations they were called upon to undertake. But it was Elena herself who had experienced the most dramatic changes. Her connection to Major Catherine Riley had grown stronger with each passing month, allowing her to access tactical knowledge and combat instincts that spanned nearly a century of warfare. During their most recent mission, protecting an anomaly site in the mountains of Pakistan from a terrorist group that had somehow learned to weaponize supernatural phenomena, Elena had found herself making impossible shots and tactical decisions that seemed to come from someone else's experience. Director Mitchell had explained that Elena was becoming what the operation called a legacy operative, someone who could channel the accumulated knowledge and abilities of previous guardians while still maintaining her own identity and decision-making capabilities. It was a rare gift that only appeared in individuals with the right combination of genetic heritage, psychological profile, and exposure to anomaly fields. Director Mitchell had explained that Elena was becoming what the operation called a legacy operative, someone who could channel the accumulated knowledge and abilities of previous guardians while still maintaining her own identity and decision-making capabilities. It was a rare gift that only appeared in individuals with the right combination of genetic heritage, psychological profile, and exposure to anomaly fields. The connection between you and Major Catherine Riley is unprecedented in our experience, Mitchell had told Elena during one of their regular briefings. Most legacy operatives can access fragments of their predecessors' memories and abilities, but you seem to be developing a true partnership with her, a sharing of consciousness that allows both of your personalities to contribute to mission success while maintaining your individual identities.
Elena had learned to recognize when Major Riley's presence was strongest, during combat operations, tactical planning sessions, and moments when split-second decisions meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The World War II veteran's voice had become a familiar companion in Elena's mind, offering guidance drawn from decades of experience protecting anomaly sites around the world. But it was during their return to Serpent Lake, now designated as Alpha Site 1 in Operation Ghostwatch's expanding network of protected locations, that Elena truly understood the scope of what she had become part of. Standing once again on the shores of the ancient body of water where her transformation had begun, Elena could see not just Major Riley, but her entire team of World War II operatives moving through their eternal patrol of the lake bottom. They were clearer now, more substantial than they had appeared during Elena's first encounter. Major Riley emerged from the water with the same fluid grace Elena remembered, but this time she walked directly up to Elena without any of the mysterious ambiguity that had characterized their initial meeting. Staff Sergeant Vasquez, Major Riley's voice carried the unmistakable authority of a career military officer, but Elena could hear warmth and approval beneath the professional tone. You've exceeded every expectation we had when we chose you for this mission. Your team has become everything we hoped. Modern warriors who understand that some battles are fought in dimensions beyond the physical world. Elena came to attention automatically, responding to the presence of a superior officer whose service record commanded respect across 7 decades. Ma'am, it's been an honor to serve alongside you and your team. We've learned that protecting our country sometimes requires us to accept responsibilities that go beyond conventional understanding. Major Riley smiled, an expression that transformed her stern features and reminded Elena that beneath the legendary warrior was a woman who had sacrificed everything for duty and honor. Staff Sergeant, what you and your Marines have accomplished in 6 months has advanced our mission more than we achieved in the previous 20 years. You've brought Operation Ghostwatch into the modern era and given us capabilities we never dreamed possible. Elena looked out across Serpent Lake, now understanding that it served as more than just a strategic location. It was a nexus point, a place where the accumulated memories and experiences of America's military heritage converged to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Ma'am, what happens next? Next, you continue expanding the mission. There are 17 other sites around the world where Guardian teams like mine are maintaining watch, but they lack the modern support and coordination you've brought to Alpha Site 1. Your role is to link these sites together, to create a global network of supernatural defenders who can respond to threats that conventional forces can't handle. Elena felt the weight of this new responsibility, but also the excitement that came with understanding the true scope of what they were building. Ma'am, my team and I are ready for whatever challenges come next. Major Riley nodded with the satisfaction of a commander who had successfully passed her mission to capable successors. I know you are, Staff Sergeant, and I want you to know that every Marine who has ever served with honor stands behind you in this work. You're not just protecting strategic sites, you're protecting the ideals that make America worth defending. As Major Riley began to fade back into the waters of Serpent Lake, her final words echoed across the ancient valley with the weight of prophecy and promise. Remember, daughter of warriors, some battles are won not through force of arms, but through the willingness to serve beyond the boundaries of life itself. You and your Marines have joined the ranks of those who serve eternal watch. Guard that honor with your lives, and know that you serve alongside the greatest warriors our nation has ever produced. Elena stood in silence for several minutes after Major Riley disappeared beneath the dark waters, processing the magnitude of what she had committed herself and her team to accomplishing. They were no longer simply Marines serving a tour of duty in Afghanistan. They had become guardians of something far older and more significant than any single war or conflict. Private Mitchell, now carrying the confident bearing of someone who had glimpsed the true nature of military service, approached Elena. Staff Sergeant, Director Mitchell wants to brief us on our next assignment. Apparently, there's been unusual activity at one of the European sites. Elena took one last look at Serpent Lake, knowing that she would return here many times in the years to come, but that each visit would find her more changed, more capable, more connected to the eternal mission that Major Riley and her team had begun so many decades ago. As the team prepared to board the helicopter that would carry them to their next assignment, Elena reflected on how profoundly her understanding of military service had evolved since that morning when 18 Taliban fighters had been eliminated by a ghost sniper who rose from an Afghani lake. She had learned that some obligations transcended individual lifespans, that honor and duty could bind warriors to their missions even beyond death, and that serving one's country sometimes required accepting responsibilities that challenged every assumption about the nature of reality itself. The helicopter lifted off from the valley of Serpent Lake, carrying Elena and her team toward new challenges and expanded responsibilities within Operation Ghostwatch. But Elena knew that no matter how far their missions might take them, no matter what supernatural forces they might encounter, they would always be connected to this ancient place where a World War II sniper had chosen them to carry on a fight that had begun before they were born and would continue long after they were gone. In the end, Elena realized that that was what it meant to be a Marine. Not just to serve for a few years and then return to civilian life, but to accept a bond of service that transcended individual existence and connected each warrior to every other warrior who had ever worn the uniform. Major Catherine Riley and her team had shown Elena and her Marines that some battles are eternal, some missions never end, and some warriors never truly leave their post. As the mountains of Afghanistan disappeared behind them, Elena smiled at the knowledge that somewhere beneath the dark waters of Serpent Lake, Major Riley continued her vigilant watch, protected now not just by her own team's supernatural dedication, but by the growing network of modern warriors who had accepted the responsibility of serving beyond the boundaries of conventional military duty. The ghost sniper had found her successors, and America's most sacred sites remained under the protection of warriors who understood that freedom's price is paid not just in blood, but in the willingness to serve eternal watch over the values and freedoms that define a nation's soul.
Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.